The Byers family house from Stranger Things is now for sale, and this house could be very much transformed into a short-stay rental for fans of the show to visit and explore. So, if you're a fan of the most successful Netflix series, you might want to stick with me till the end, as the gist and detail I've brought will surely make you very happy. Without any further delay, let's get into it. What does it take to own the Byers family house from Stranger Things? One of the most iconic properties of Stranger Things is for sale, but unlike other places, this house is not fictional, put together, or created just for the series. But it exists. It is functional and it's located in a quiet area. Likewise, it's believed that it's a very cheap piece that will eventually double its cost, thanks to the reference to the Netflix series. The place we're talking about is the Byers house, where Will, Jonathan, and Joyce Byers live. In fact, they were able to stay there for a while to feel completely attached to the house. This was built in 1900, although it was a bit cheap at the time. Today it's not so much, but it is enough so that fans can access it. Wondering where the Byers house is located? Keep watching to find out. Unfortunately for the loyal fans of Stranger Things, the Byers house is not located in Hawkins, because unfortunately, it is a city created for the story. But it should be noted that the Byers house is in Fayetteville, Georgia. In fact, the place is quite a crowded space, but quiet enough to live in. Therefore, the owner has described it as an ideal space to be Airbnb, so the new owner can make this house the most of Stranger Things. How cool! What about the cost? Well, in my opinion, I think the cost is really affordable. As I've mentioned earlier, I haven't mentioned it before. Nevertheless, the Byers house is for sale for $450,000, and the size of the house is 6,000 square feet, spread across 6 acres. However, experts believe that the cost is not high because it gives room for just minor repairs and some classy changes, which will give it more value as well as the name and reference itself. In the house, you can see the most iconic spaces, starting with that wall where Joyce places Christmas lights to be able to communicate with her son. In fact, that's probably the most memorable sequence in the entire series, along with Eleven and her bleeding nose, which was shot on location. This house becomes one of the locations of Stranger Things, thanks to the fact that the Duffer Brothers, the producers of the series, approached the owners of the Byers house, who are 7 brothers, to offer them a trust and be able to film there in 2015. And now they prefer to have an extra income putting it in the real estate market. Since Stranger Things came out in 2016 and became a cult favorite almost right away, the family selling the house is used to the attention it brings. When Stranger Things Volume 2 came out in July, Netflix platform in Australia crashed due to heavy streaming requests. This shows how popular the show is, not just in the US, but all over the world. Since the show started airing, fans have come from all over the world almost every day just to drive by and take a picture. So much so that the owners had to put up a driveway barricade and private property signs to keep people from trespassing. So it goes without saying that the house gets a lot of attention. In addition to the purchase price, the buyer will need to put an extra $50,000 to $100,000 US into the single-story home, which is 100 years old, to fix it up so that it can be used as an Airbnb. The sellers don't have the money or time to fix it up and turn it into a tourist attraction or an Airbnb, so they want to sell it to someone else who can do it. It's been in their family for as long as they can remember. Before it became a Hollywood set for movies about other worlds, it was a place for tired people to stay. When people were having a hard time, their mom would take them in and help them get back on their feet. She would feed them and let them stay for a few days until they got to where they needed to go. In other news, let's talk about some of the houses that Queen Elizabeth had from her birth to her death. Throughout her extraordinary 96 years, Queen Elizabeth's homes ranged from a row house in London's Mayfair to the grandest residences of the crown. Although most monarchs live in castles and palaces their entire lives, the late Queen was not born expecting to ascend the throne. In fact, she was the first British monarch to be born in a private home. Her early days were spent living in grand but not technically palatial surroundings, and she had a somewhat normal childhood until her father unexpectedly became king in 1936. Following the abdication of her brother, King Edward VIII. From her birthplace to her beloved Balmoral, where she died peacefully on September 8, 2022, here are some out of the many houses of Queen Elizabeth II. The first on our list is 17 Bruton Street. Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was born on April 21, 1926, at the Mayfair home of her maternal grandparents, the Earl and Countess of Strathmore. Her parents had moved into the townhouse several weeks before her birth and would remain there for several months. The next on our list is the White Lodge. After their wedding, the Duke and Duchess of York, Elizabeth's parents, before she became king and queen, Queen, lived at White Lodge in Richmond, England at the suggestion of Queen Mary, who grew up in the house. Although she was born in London, White Lodge is listed as her parents' address on Princess Elizabeth's birth certificate. In 1927, the couple gave up the house, which was originally built in 1627 as a hunting lodge for George II by architect Roger Morris. In 1954, the building was purchased as the new headquarters for the junior section of the Royal Ballet School. How much do you know of the 145 Piccadilly? Later, in 1926, the family would move to a Georgian house at 145 Piccadilly. In her book Her Little Princesses, the future monarch's nanny, Marion Crawford, described the five-story building near Hyde Park Corner as an unassuming, homey house. Country Life magazine said in a 1921 advertisement that the house, which it called a significant mansion, featured an entrance hall, main stair hall, secondary stair with eclectic passenger elevator, living room, dining room, study library, some 25 bedrooms, and a conservatory. Hamilton Garden, a small park shared by residents of neighboring buildings, was located at the rear of the house and was used daily by the future queen and her sister, Princess Margaret, for play. The family moved in 1936, and the property was badly damaged in 1940 during a World War II bombing raid. What about the Royal Lodge? Later, while living at 145 Piccadilly, the family spent weekends at the Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park. The Grade II listed property has a rich history dating back to the mid-17th century, with additions built by architects including John Nash and Geoffrey Wyatville. Much of the building was demolished by King William IV in the 1830s, but the conservatory remained a residence. The country house was enlarged in the 1930s by the future King George VI. The family continued to visit the site after moving to Buckingham Palace. Next up on our list is the Buckingham Palace. Princess Elizabeth took up residence at Buckingham Palace in 1936, when her father became king. Initially a townhouse built in 1703, the building was purchased by King George III for Queen Charlotte in 1761. It became the official residence of the royal family in London in 1837, when Queen Victoria came to the throne. Architects John Nash and Edward Bloor extended the palace during the 19th century, and the iconic facade was remodeled in the early 20th century. The palace has 775 rooms, including 19 cabins, 52 bedrooms for royalty and their guests, 188 bedrooms for staff, 78 bathrooms, and 92 offices. After becoming queen in 1952, Queen Elizabeth used the palace as her permanent residence until 2020, when she moved to Windsor Castle full-time. Next, let's talk about the Holyrood House. The Palace of Holyrood House was the Queen's official residence in Scotland. The palace was originally a monastery founded in 1128 and was the home of Mary, Queen of Scots. Her Majesty spent a week there every summer, usually from late June to early July. Wrapping it up, let's talk about the Balmoral Castle. Located in Aberdeenshire, Scotland, Balmoral is the place where the Queen spent her summers, usually from July to early October. The 50,000-acre estate was purchased in 1852 by Prince Albert, who demolished the original castle after a new Scottish baronial-style one was completed in 1856. The estate, which was his private property, was considered by many to be his favorite, and there she died surrounded by her family on September 8th. That concludes today's video. If you found the video helpful, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to share the video with your friends and family. See you next time!